Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of the Underground Kings podcast. Today, I am joined by my very close friend, Chris Murphy, founder of Red Button Visuals.
What's up, man? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue for sure. We've been planning this for how long now?
At least a month. Maybe
month.
2. I don't know. It's been a while.
All right, so give everybody a little bit of background on, what it is your day-to-day entails, like what it is that your company does. Obviously you're in videography, very competitive market. Mm-hmm. Give us a little details on what you got going on.
Yeah, so my company's called Red Button Visuals. I've been in business for probably about 5 years now. I actually kind of got into it because of fitness. So I was big into the workout fitness space, and I was following guys like Christian Guzman, some other big influencers online, and everyone was gravitating towards YouTube. So I was like, I need to start documenting my process because I'd gotten in pretty good shape. So I bought a camera. It was like a Canon, I think it was the T7i.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first camera. And I remember I started trying to film, and I was just really uncomfortable being on camera. And I really wasn't familiar with content. At the time, we didn't have Reels. TikTok wasn't a thing. So really the short form video content was not a thing. It was all YouTube long form. So you're walking around with a camera vlogging. And that's what's been really interesting with like the change in social platforms is now you've got all this short form video content. Everyone's more inclined to be a creator. But back then it was like either did long form or you really didn't do anything. And I was not comfortable walking around the gym just doing full length videos and then the process of editing those videos. So it wasn't long. I think about a month into it, I was just like, I'm not going to do this consistently. I'm just not into it, So, but I had the gear. So, and I really liked the feel of the camera in my hand. And that's when I decided to kind of invest in learning how to do photo and video. So kind of fast forward, and I got a few friends that wanted me to do some content for them, and I got paid, and I was like, wow, you can actually make decent money doing this. Because at the time I was like serving and bartending. So that's where I was like, this is something I really enjoy. There is opportunity to make some money. Social media is growing. And that's kind of when I went all in. And fast forward now, I run a business doing content creation, social media management for local businesses. So it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. How old are you now?
34.
34.
Wait, I'm 35.
35.
I'm
okay.
35.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I turned
man.
35 in December. So
nice. I just turned 25 a week ago, and like the whole time everybody's like, oh, this is like your big, quarter century birthday. And I was like, well, first and foremost, I don't celebrate birthdays. And then, I did this year, bang out, like insane. And then, but I thought I was 23 all year. So I was like, the second somebody said like, you're turning 25, I was like, damn.
I'm glad I'm not alone. Yeah, as soon as you hit 30, that was the game changer for me hitting that age because you kind of have this moment of like, holy crap, the 20s are over. It's time to get serious. And, I don't know, you kind of check yourself. And honestly, for a minute, it was kind of depressing because it's like, dude, I still haven't found out, what my thing is. I still hadn't dialed that in. I thought it was going to be fitness when I turned 30, which again, that's why I picked up the camera and did all that. But, and I still love fitness. I still have a huge passion for it. But, I guess right now, like time's kind of slowed down in the sense that, you can find your career a lot later in life. I feel like we're a lot more healthy, a lot more vibrant. I feel like people for the most part take care of themselves, but a lot of the careers, there's little, less barrier to entry. So, if we wanted to learn how to, I don't know, do this, what do you call this?
Slat wall.
Slat wall. So if you want to learn how to do slat wall, you can hop on YouTube and learn how to do slat wall in just a few hours, and probably over a course of a couple of weeks, be pretty good at it, I'd bet. So that's, in that sense, it's never too late to start something. So I feel like 25, super young to start a business. 35, I still feel very young and starting with, as far as where I'm at with my business. And this is one of those fields I feel like that can grow so exponentially quick that even starting at 30 years old, which I did, 35, I'm just now really hitting the stride of filling out how this works and how to be successful with pitching and improving content and systems, that, honestly, it's like you can pick any career and learn how to, not necessarily be an expert, but be pretty darn good at it within 6 months to a year, no matter what you decide. So it's like you're 34, 35, 38, 40, you want to get into photo, video, whatever, definitely not too late.
I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting, how much I feel like our generation, or kind of like the generation coming up right now, we're finally starting to see that shift in the perspective on the formal education system. Like people are finally starting to open their eyes to just how corrupt that entire system had become. You know, when it first started out, you know, I think about like my parents' generation. Their parents were encouraging them, their teachers, their peers were encouraging them to go to college, to get a college education, to get a degree, to be successful. And that route actually led to them being successful. It was actually, there was a direct correlation with how much they were spending on college as an investment to how much they were going to be making post-college. Now what you have is the same jobs available for the same level of expertise, the same exact college education, and you have, you know, price points on the college education that are tenfold what they were. You know, kids going 6 figures into student loan debt for a liberal arts degree or for a business degree. I graduated a little bit early, so I went 3.5 years, got my bachelor's degree, marketing, business admin, like kind of your grade A typical, like went to college for business kid, and have been running my company now for, so Blades Marketing is going on like 4.5 years now. Started it while I was still in school, and never applied a single thing that I learned in college towards that business model. It was a complete waste of time and money. I mean, not a complete, because I got to meet people, you know, I had some experiences, whatever it is, but at the same time, like put a price point on that, you can go experience a lot of things.
100%. Yeah. You know, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, whatever we spent, you know, myself as well, went to UT. I think it was like 20 grand a year semester. I forget what we paid, but I know I racked up like 30 grand in debt. But yeah, I mean, that money could have been well spent to travel, see the world, network with people in other parts of the country. Don't even have to go out of the country. I mean, I haven't seen half of the United States, not even a half. I mean, I've probably seen 1/4 of the state. So that money could be well spent and invested doing a lot more productive things. And yeah, your point, you kind of nailed it with universities. Like the education system and the piece of paper you get's been heavily devalued. There's really not, I won't say there's no value. There's still some careers like the medical field, lawyers, engineers. There's you know, the trade schools, there's a huge market and need for you to go to school. You know, you can't learn everything on the job with those careers, but for typical people that just, you know, want to get into business, marketing, something general, I definitely think I would have preferred to go the route I did when I was 30, which was just pick up something and figure it out. You know, that's what we did when we were kids. We just messed around with things. You took things apart and put them back together. I can't tell you how many remote control cars and remotes that I took apart and rebuilt, and you just did it to do it. It was just fun. You just wanted to see what was inside of it. And, you know, now that's kind of lost, or has been for the past few years. I think we're finally getting out of that typical school system mentality, but I do think a lot of kids still want to party and they want that side of it. So they know their intention to go into school is not necessarily just for the degree. They're desiring the social experience. So there's always going to be a market for schools, but I definitely think for the person that's very business-minded at a young age, 16, 17 years old, you're seeing these kids that are quiet in the dark. Nobody knows them. They don't really do much social interaction. They're just hustling and grinding. They're millionaires by 19, 20 years old. You're seeing it pop up everywhere. So, yeah, definitely. I feel like we kind of got screwed, our generation, a little bit with the school system, but I still don't think it's too late to you know, take advantage of opportunities. And I definitely think I learned a lot going to school, regardless of, you know, the time I wasted. There was a lot of value that I got in networking and learning about myself.
No, I couldn't agree more. And like just making stupid mistakes.
A lot of stupid mistakes.
College kid.
I got arrested multiple times. Yeah. It was not great.
Let's delve into a bit of your backstory leading up to obviously this very new chapter that you have going on, you know, as far as your business mentality. You know, you've got the house now, you know, you're looking at, you know, you've got a serious relationship, you're looking to build out all these things, and you're very, you know, anybody that's around you as of right now probably looks up to you or sees you as kind of a bit of a role model for a young man who's taking his physicality seriously, is taking his finances seriously, is working his ass off. But I know, and I think the audience would benefit from knowing some of the events that led you to that point.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely, I I've never really viewed myself as a role model, just because, you know, I know myself and the mistakes I've made more than most do. So, you know, it's those secrets and those mistakes you made that kind of keep you thinking that you haven't really changed that much, or that, you know, that you don't really, you don't give yourself enough grace sometimes. So I appreciate you saying that, but I definitely still feel like that 25, 24-year-old something trying to figure it out at times, a lot of times. But yeah, I think, you know, what kind of got me to where I'm at as far as with business and relationship, and again, this relationship's been huge. I will say that having the right partner makes a huge difference. I think a lot of the mistakes I made early on when I was younger was picking partners based on the wrong parameters. You know, I wasn't looking for someone that was going to not only be someone I cared about and loved and had an intimate relationship with, but also someone that I could share business ideas with. So my girlfriend's really smart. She's really well-rounded, and although we differ on a lot of opinions and ideals, she's able to see the other side, and she comes from a place of just understanding versus argumentative. She's like, this is how, you know, I see things. So she's opened me up as far as like how I perceive things. It's not always black and white. Of course, I always have my values, my morals, my beliefs, but it's that back and forth that we have that's healthy and respectful, that I really appreciate about my girlfriend, and it's helped me in every aspect of my business. Now, we've only been dating for a full year, but just in this year alone, I've doubled my client list, and I think a lot of that has to do with the relationship that her and I have at home, because it affects how I treat other people. I don't drink as much, if hardly at all. I don't go out. I don't really have a reason to spend and, you know, have late nights like I used to. And previous to this year, I mean, that was a lot of my routine was, you know, I was still doing the Friday, Saturday night drinking. Sunday, you know, football Sunday was an excuse to drink from, you know, 10 till 2. All those kind of behaviors that they aren't, you know, revenue generating activities by any sense. So, you know, I think a lot of what has developed over time and me leading into this healthier relationship was just a lot of pain, honestly. Financial pain. I remember in previous relationships, or even when I wasn't in a relationship, it was hard to keep, you know, $1,000 consistently in the bank. Like, it was always a goal of mine to get to 5K. And that was in my 20s. You know, I just never had money. I didn't grow up with money. My parents didn't have money. I grew up adopted, and it was just understood that money was hard to come by. You know, you have to be like in the lottery to make money, and you know, and then even with school. So full transparency, I didn't even graduate from university. You know, I'm still 3 credit hours shy of having the actual degree, and was actually over an internship that I didn't complete, which is just silly. But yeah, so it was always in my mind that, you know, you had to have certain, you had to check certain boxes to make money, and that had to be, you know, family, relationships, whatever. Some people were set up for success, and that was just a big lie. And it was a belief that I held onto for a really long time. And I think that's just because, for one, you know, the environment I was raised in to believe, the belief systems I told myself, but also I don't think I had enough wins that I gave myself credit for. You know, I think a lot of times the smaller wins that you have, you don't really, you make excuses for them. You justify your wins. You don't give yourself any credit. So they don't really hold any weight. You know what I mean? So like, you know, you win a basketball game or something, and so you can get cocky and arrogant and say that, you know, you're a good basketball player in that moment. But when it comes to playing, say you're playing guys that are 2 feet taller than you, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not that good. I don't want to play with you guys because I just, you guys are block every shot. You know, you come up with reasons why you're not good enough to play when it comes to playing at a higher level. You know, you come up with all these excuses. So you got to give yourself some credit, give yourself some grace. And I think that's helped me, along with meeting people like you and networking. And that's just come from, you know, doing business and being in the thing. It's not from any special DMing or trying to show out. It's really just working with people and them saying nice things about you, and you hearing nice things about other people, and coming together and, you know, sharing experiences, sharing stories, and seeing how, you know, people can work together. And that's really kind of what I've developed over the time. I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's really just been kind of giving myself some grace, some credit, and doing the work, really. I think, and pain will teach you that, you know, unfortunately. Some people learn easier ways. I've always been a hard learner, you know, being broke, homeless, all of it, like jail, all of it. So I'm glad a lot of it happened, because who knows where I'd be if I didn't get in trouble the ways I did, some of that stuff saved me for sure.
I would definitely consider myself a man of extremes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, like in order to like learn a lesson, like something, it has to be like big. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Especially like for me to do a full 180 pivot, for me to like make a life-changing decision, to me, it's like I will let it get to such an extent because I have this delusional idea that I can conquer anything. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'll just go. And then eventually you kind of reach that point where you're just like, there is no more going. Like you've finally reached that wall. And it's like, okay, I got to turn, I got to pivot, I got to do something else. So I definitely resonate with that. And I also would comment on something else you said, which was like how important it is for you in your life to get that, I guess, to hear those positive remarks mm-hmm. and like positive like words of affirmation from other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm sure a lot of people relate with this, or actually probably not a lot of people, probably few people may relate with this, but like for me, that has also been like getting those words of affirmation and positive remarks from other people in my life has always been so important and integral to me, which is why I guard my inner circle, I guard my inner social life so desperately, is because like those remarks to me that's my fuel, because I don't get those remarks from myself. Like when it's myself talking to myself in an isolated environment, those conversations aren't pleasant. Like those conversations are not, great job. Mm-hmm. Like, look how much you've accomplished. It's right. Never enough.
Never good enough.
It's never good enough. But, I definitely can resonate with that as well. That's why I think for me, like I always put results on the pedestal. Like I don't care about like how busy you are or how much work, quote unquote, that you're doing, or how much you're hustling, or how much like you have of this or that or the other thing. Like, what have you gotten done? What have you actually accomplished? And what has been the direct result of that? Because that's the only measure to me. Like, that's the only way my brain can quantify progress, is like what has been the result for other people. Like, I don't know. It's just like, even with the gym, like you said, you were very much into like the fitness realm. Mm-hmm. Like, if you were to look back on yourself when, you were like 15, 16 years old, maybe just starting to lift, I don't know, hanging out and stuff, like you don't really, like, there's all this progress that you've made, you're a sizable dude, you got some muscle mass on you, but like in the day to day, do you really like see that growth?
Not at all. And that's a good point. 'Cause I think that's why a lot of people lose their motivation. And because that's something that I used to look up a lot of motivational stuff, like how to stay motivated, because I was a very seasonal lifter. And going back to the 16, 14, 15 thing, I was like 140 pounds soaking wet. Like I didn't put on any weight until I was 25. So after college, I actually started building muscle. So I honestly and truly believed it was 100% genetic, and that I was always just going to be a skinny guy. Because I didn't see people putting in the work. I didn't spend time in the gym seeing how guys built muscle. I wasn't looking up videos to see how you gain weight. I just assumed I ate like everyone else, and I just don't put on weight. Some people do, some people don't. But anyways, that was just one of those beliefs that I just didn't take the time to study and learn. But yeah, the motivation thing, I think that just comes down to like to discipline, because you're not going to see the day-to-day progress. There's a couple of days where you wake up and you see that you're a little bit leaner, you don't have that water on your stomach. You're like, you pull down, you're like, oh my God, this is, some good abs. And you have that for a little bit in the morning. So that gives you a little bit of excitement, especially as you're trying to drop and lean out. I think the lowest I've ever been is like, I don't know, like 10% body fat, which that was actually last year this time. Now I'm at like 15 or 16. Yeah. I put on some pudge, but yeah, again, you don't see the day to day. So it's kind of like, how do you measure it? And I think it's just on the day-to-day boring activities. Like, did I go through my list? Did I write down my notes? Did I follow up with people? Did I do something that pushed the needle forward? And I think if you kind of hold yourself more to those standards versus the actual end results every time, I mean, because you're not always gonna close the deal or win the day or complete every task on your checklist. But I think if you get about, if you do an 80-20 rule, if I get 80% done, it's a pretty darn good day. If I do 20%, maybe that's slack, but I could also maybe give myself some grace as long as I'm not making excuses for why it didn't get done. But yeah, I don't know if I got off track with what you're kind of saying, but I do think, it's important to remember why you started and then also have those goals. Like, very similarly to you, I feel like I'm never done and it's never good enough. I'm struggling. I still feel like I'm broke. I tell Demi all the time, like, I still feel like I'm broke, and I'll never, no matter how much money I ever make, and I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even think I'm doing amazing, but I think I am doing well. I'm able to finally save some money into the bank, and that's just doing that was something that was eye-opening to me. I was like, wow, maybe I can actually get, $30K in the bank. Maybe I can, whatever that number is, it's, as you elevate, the bar's always going to get higher. So I know I'll never be satisfied in that sense, but I do, I kind of lost track. I guess I was just saying, like, keep in mind what your goals are. And with me, it's, I want to help other people build businesses within the business. Like, bringing on Ethan, working with you, and just growing. And there's so many other things other than the day-to-day grind that I think are exciting about what's happening versus, just, always focusing on just numbers and money or whatever it is.
I absolutely agree with you. I've always struggled too with, like, my thing with money. Whenever I've never been obsessed with, like, the money. For some reason, I just never formed that tether. Now, do I vigorously track my finances? Like, yeah, for the most part, like, for the sake of the business, like, I'm pretty vigilant on that side. But it's really funny. I actually have a very, I would say it's probably not the smart thing to do. So, like, for people to not use this as advice, this is just what I've done. Is in the past, when business started going and it looked like some things were going to fall into place, I have always had this little tradition that I would do with myself. I will log out of all my banking apps, all my banking accounts, my credit card stuff on my phone, where normally you'd get notifications, or I would be checking it daily, like looking wherever all the numbers are at, looking at my QuickBooks. And I'll give myself a set amount of time. I'll say, I'm not looking at this for a month. And it's an uncomfortable amount of time that I'm willing to go. And that's why I'm saying, like, people shouldn't take this as advice. But when I completely do that and I sever myself from that, and I just purely focus on the action and the doing, as opposed to becoming obsessed with take action, check if you got a result, take action, check if you got a result. And it's funny. All 3 times that I've done it in the past year, I shattered what I thought were my prior financial records those months. That's time over time.
What's funny is, like, I used to never look at my bank account. I was terrified. Dude, I was like, I did not want to know, because it was so scary, like, check to check. Like, I just wanted to assume. Dude, and there were several times where I knew, like, I was, like, overdrawn on my account. I was sure. Like, it was because I remember last time I looked at it, it was like $260 left in there in the checking, and I just spent $140, and like, there were several times, and I just didn't want to know. I just didn't want to see it. I was like, I don't want to see you overdrawn. I'm just not going to look at it. I'm just going to wait till next check. And now, but like you're saying, I check it probably every day. And I actually listened to a podcast that said you should check it every day. So I don't know if it was a Dave Ramsey or something like that, but they were like, yeah, check it every day, because that's going to make sure, if you see your money there, you won't spend it as much, because you want to keep holding on to what you have. But I will say, it makes me very, like, paranoid and annoyed, when I don't see the immediate result. Like, my bank account's still the same as it was yesterday. So I like what you said. That's a cool idea. I don't know if I'd log out of everything. I mean, but I would have to do something, because I definitely can't not check it now.
I straight up can't even have, like, the notifications coming in. Like, I can't even have, like, invoice. Like, I can have invoice paid, because obviously I want to make sure that things are going through.
Right.
So I'll have those on, but never for, like, the amount.
Okay.
So, like, I don't want to know how much I'm making, how much I'm spending on the business, nothing. I mean, like, I've never done it when I was in a position where, like, I could have accidentally overspent or something. Like, I made sure I was solidified. Like, I knew, like, okay, month over month, like, I can forecast out, like, I'm not going to spend more than I make. Like, I'm okay this month. But then I'll just completely check out. And like I said, this past year I did it 3 times, 3 different months. Every single time it was completely shattered what I thought was prior possible. Next time I went a couple months, completely shattered what I thought was priorly possible. And then the same that December month. And it's like, because for me, with that, I guess that kind of that sick or ill, if you will, relationship that I have with myself at times, or like that like self-talk, which is something I'm definitely like working on regularly, or like trying to work on, I don't know. But for me, like I need to separate myself from like the metric of perceived success at times, so that I can focus on just doing the actions that are going to make me successful.
Okay.
It's like, I look at it as, you know, you could be lifting weights, like getting into weightlifting or whatever. And there's the one friend who's like, got to have his shirt off while he's working out, and he's flexing in the mirror, like after every set. And he's like, dude, look at this. And like, you get almost so like obsessive compulsive with like, oh, like, am I bigger or am I getting stronger? Like in every given moment, when it's like, most of the time, especially as like a veteran to working out, like that friend who's new to it is constantly checking himself. Is like, dude, you're not getting, like, it's called extra blood flow. Like your muscle probably hasn't seen it in years. You know what I mean? 100%. It's just one of those things. So I separate that. Just I guess a strange thing that I have done. And I'd love to get to a point, because I know that about myself. The sooner the better that I can get to a point where someone handles all of my finances, all of my accounting, bookkeeping, all these things, and they just give me a report at the end of the month that's like, I'll give them parameters and say, this means we're doing good. This means Colden's happy. This means Colden's not happy. And all I want to know is if we're in one of those two segments. Yeah. Period. End of story. Not like, oh, like we increased our returns by 175%. I'm like, okay, well, tell me that, and then I'm going to want to do 700%. Like, just let me focus on doing the 700%. Let me focus on the growth. Yeah, that's interesting, though. You saying, like, all the money stuff was, like, overdrawn. I've never overdrawn on an account.
Yeah, I did. It was a regular thing. So, and it's cool that you have the tools like that, because I think everyone's got their little, like, techniques, their little gimmicks. One thing I do right now that has helped me with my finances quite a bit is I separate my bank account into 5 accounts. So this has been a game changer for me. So within my Bank America app, I have like my regular checking, I have a tax account, I have a profit account, a compensation, and then just like a travel or splurge account. And then next to each one, I named it. So it's got like tax 20%. Each one has a number next to it. So when I get paid, I just immediately distribute that money where it's supposed to be at. So taxes used to terrify me. Now that money automatically goes into taxes, I don't look at it again. I know any money's in taxes, not my money. And same thing for compensation and profit. Compensation is, what I pay myself. I pay myself whatever 40%. Then the rest is distributed where it's supposed to go. So that's been one tactic that helps me, and that's one of the reasons why it'll be difficult for me to stop looking at it. But yeah, so yeah, as far as like finances go, it's really, I think, just coming up with a system that works for you. Whether it's like Dave Ramsey or whatever. With me, it's been, I'm not actually sure where I learned about the separating the accounts thing, but it's definitely been helpful for me as far as like taxes go at the end of the year, because as an entrepreneur, that was the biggest shift for me. It was like, oh man, like I got to take care of all this stuff myself. That's some of the stuff that people don't see with the business side, is like, we got to do the invoicing. We got to follow up with clients. We got to take care of complaints and be HR. We got to HR ourselves. I got to take care of my own, be accountable for this. And then of course the finances. So I think having those systems is what really helps, in this process. But as far as you and your business, kind of, how did you get to where you're at with, this podcast and your marketing agency? Like, what kind of spurred that on with you? Because I know you said you started in college.
Yep. So I went kind of growing up in high school, extremely small town. Like, and I tell people, like, I grew up in a small town, and they're like, oh yeah, me too. Like, wherever. I'm like, no, like 21 kids in my graduating class, small town. Like, tiny. Very tiny. Like, farms, this kind of thing, like whatever. And we were the biggest class in my school, one of the biggest, I believe, when I was there, K through 12, all in one building.
So, you knew every kid in school, like.
Yeah. Everyone knew you and your extended family, which basically is like, you've got to probe up your ass all the time when we used to get in trouble, you know, like you had to always be careful because like somebody always knew somebody, and then word would get back to your parents that you were, I don't know, vandalizing something or climbing somewhere you shouldn't have been, trespassing, whatever. And but grew up there, kind of fell into the whole like school's not for me, but I was really, really good at it. Like that's the thing. It wasn't for me, not because I wasn't good at it. It wasn't for me because it was so easy. School was so easy for me that it bored me out of my mind. So I kind of figured out what I needed to do to basically just like get doing the bare minimum to get by. And mind you, testament to, you know, the school system right now. Like I was still getting A's doing the bare minimum. Like it was just like that simple. So did that, got a full ride tuition scholarship to Plattsburgh State. This is a nearby college. Decided to go there for business administration and marketing. So once I was in college, it was about a year in, I remember going home to my parents during one of my winter breaks. And I went to them and I just said, I don't think college is for me. Like I don't know why, I had been binge watching all these YouTube videos of like entrepreneurs and like young guys making crazy money doing stuff that I was like, I mean, if they can do it, I can do it. But I didn't necessarily know exactly what it was. Then I kind of stumbled upon like social media marketing agency model or the agency model in general. I was like, I think this is something I really like feel an aptitude towards, and like I enjoy marketing and the idea of building brands. So started learning more and more, went home that winter break, said, hey, I don't think school's for me. I want to drop out and start my own business. And I sat down and had the conversation with my mother, and she was like, yeah, go for it. Like, drop out now then if you want to. And I was like, all right, cool. So then I went to my father.
Legitimately support.
Yeah. Then I went to my father and I said, so mom already said it's okay. Like that's how I framed it up, of course. I said, I think I want to drop out of school and pursue this dream of starting my own business in something I've never done before. And I think school is useless and all these different things, at least for someone like myself. And he immediately was like, looked like he was going to have a stroke and like, was like, yeah, no, like that's just a horrible idea. Like, what are you thinking? And so from that moment forward, I actually decided to finish school for my father. So I finished school for my dad. But I did make myself the promise of, I'm going to finish school. I'm going to get the degree in the shortest amount of time possible and with the lowest grades possible to still get the degree. Like I no longer care about my grades so long as I'm getting credit for the courses. So I went by doing the bare minimum. The last year that I was in school, I actually officially launched Blades Marketing. Within my first 3 months, had signed my first client, which was, shout out Leo, out in California. He was a hip hop artist. And like, I just was sending cold DMs all day on Instagram, and he just hit me back and he was like, yo, let's jump on a call. And I remember like going out in my backyard that day for my scheduled call after I got home from classes and like taking the call, and signed him for $220 a month or something crazy like that to post like every single day, create the content, like edit, like all this stuff. But I just loved it. I loved learning. And so did that for a while, and, really just stuck with that for a couple of years. Then I made this big move to Myrtle Beach. Everybody asked me, what brought you here? The answer is like basically throwing a dart at the map, like because a buddy of mine was like, hey, this place is cool. It's got a lot of opportunity for you. And I had never been here prior. And then the second one is just, I had nothing to lose at the time. I was just like I was in a dark place, and I was also like, okay, I've been running this business out of my parents' basement, and like, I feel like all the comforts of home and all of like the same friends I've been around and the same environment I've always grown up in, I needed a change, and I needed it to be drastic. Mm-hmm. So I packed all my belongings in a car, I took off and came to Myrtle Beach, and now here we are, podcast studio. Now I'm launching some other brands that are coming along with the Underground Kings podcast. Is kind of like was the entry point for that. some people have probably already found some of the other brand pages that I've created. So they probably are starting to put 2 and 2 together and realize where I'm going with this and what some of the things are for the future. But, you know, just some really, really big projects that I'm going to launch. I'm sure I'm going to put out the first initial content for, or launch some of the websites for them and launch the products or services. And I know for a fact people are going to go like, oh, wow, this is like such a cool concept that you just came up with. Not knowing that I've been working completely in silence on these things for, I mean, we're talking like upwards of like 2 years now.
Right.
Like I knew exactly what I was going to be doing now 2 years ago. It was all in the plan. Like I have it in a journal in my handwriting with like the date on it to prove it. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Coming to fruition. I mean, writing things down and taking action, like you packing up and moving here. I kind of have a similar story. Well, mine was more so running from trouble and getting away, like, or I was going to die type of thing. I was like, I cannot be around the same environments anymore. So I really didn't have a lot of choice in the matter of moving here, but it was a great decision. But yeah, it's funny. You're mentioning the Instagram DM thing that started your business. I started doing that as well. It was around COVID time because I was working in a restaurant at the time. And when the lockdown happened, they shut down the restaurant. So my income was like completely cut off. And at that time, I was just doing like the photo video thing part-time. So I was just like, I've got to dive in and find some business. So I just started, just like you, DMing. I came up with like a script, and I kind of fine-tuned it over time, but I ended up basically like DMing e-commerce brands. Yep. Like I'd send out like 7 to 10 DMs a day, and just
7 to 10.
I should have been doing like 30.
I'll just tell you, right? I literally what you're saying is exactly what I was doing when I first started. Like, had no clue, except I had to have been sending like 60 or 80 a day.
Oh my gosh.
I was sending a lot though, dude. I was like so desperate. I was just
I mean, I was desperate too, for sure. I think what my approach was, I wanted to find very specific brands. So I was trying to find, at the time I was still focusing on fitness. So my idea was I wanted to find fitness brands that had less than 5,000 followers or less than 10,000 followers, because I knew that I would likely get in touch with the manager or the person that owned the business. They'd probably still be running the account. I didn't want to have to deal with like a social media marketing manager. So I was like vetting all these accounts, trying to find decent ones that weren't, because there were those scammy, spammy looking accounts too that had like fake looking clothes, like the fake gym accounts. There's a lot of fake gym accounts that had just like stuff from like Alibaba on them. So I was trying to avoid that too, but I ended up messaging, like, I think after that first, this is literally, I think it took me like 2 weeks of messaging to get some serious replies. But I think out of maybe like the 30 or 45 messages that I'd sent out, I ended up getting like 15 or so replies. Some were just like, we already got a guy, And then I got down to about 11 that wanted to talk to me. Out of those 11, I ended up landing 7 of them as retainer clients. I was like, dude, I'm not going back to the restaurant. And they ended up opening them back up shortly after then, just doing like, I guess like takeout or whatever. They're like, we want everyone to come back, have an opportunity to work. And I was just like, nah, it's like, I'm going to pursue this. So, cause at the time, again, I was just doing like side gigs. I was just doing freelance when I could get it. The retainer idea was just, I didn't even know if that was something feasible or reasonable at the time, cause I'd never really done one. The only retainer that I quote unquote had was with my buddy's company, Johnny, who owns a company called Mafia, which is really huge now. But he gave me an opportunity, which was really cool. He was like, Chris, here's a shot, take some photos. We've got a couple guys that do it for us, but if you take some decent photos, we'll give you a small retainer, anywhere from $500 to $600. So that was the first shot I had at doing the retainer client. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, this whole e-com photography thing. And when COVID hit, that was just like a huge blessing. I don't know if we should say that word on here. Is that going to like spam the podcast?
Well, I'll literally have to blip it out, because of the fact that like the overarching puppet masters are all like,
So when the vid, but no, that was a huge blessing. I don't know if it helped you in your business at all. Did that impact things with you too, or you just no effect? You were kind of just doing your thing.
I mean, dude, to me it was like business as usual.
Okay.
I was just like, I remember just being dumbfounded at like all the mess that it was creating for so many people. I was infuriated, if anything.
Oh yeah.
Because for me, I was sitting there in a very small town watching mom and pop shops like parents of local kids and like local families, I was having to witness them not being able to put food on the table for their families because the government felt that it was within their rights to tell them that they don't have the right to make a living.
Right.
Excuse me? I told everybody, like, honest to God, had they come to me and, like, let's say I had a restaurant and they said, hey, you know what? You got to close your doors and we're not going to be giving you any supplemental pay. It is what it is for you. Sorry. I wouldn't have closed those doors.
Right. What did they label them? Non-essential.
Non-essential. Yeah, non-essential. You know what's not essential? 99% of government-run programs and government-funded programs that are funded by who? Us, the taxpayers.
Right.
Like, okay, I'd like to have a conversation with whatever empty shell of a guy who's in charge about like what's considered essential.
Very out of touch at the top. Very out of touch with regular people.
Completely. And I think, you know, it's tough where society is like heading. I think that, you know, for the first time though, in a while, I feel a certain level of comfort with a little bit of a pushback going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like I finally feel like there's some people that are starting to push back. I just had a conversation with my brother about this the other day though. You know, it's one thing to open your eyes and realize that you're being corralled by, you know, the sheep herder and you're just within the flock of sheep.
Right.
It's one thing to open your eyes and like actually see for the first time that you are a sheep in the flock. It's a whole nother thing to escape the flock.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it's like, you know, I think a lot of people jump really quickly. A lot of like men like ourselves that are very, you know, like beat my chest, like, you know, put up a fight, like lifting weights, doing all like just being not only a good man, but being good at being a man. You know, it's very easy for us to like get caught up in like, oh, you're all just a bunch of sheep and like you guys are just nuts and you're just, you know, just following orders. Like, how dare you? What you don't even realize is like you're still in the flock. Like whether you know you're in the flock or not,
right?
That's not what changes things.
And that is a big part of it. There's a ignorance or lack of awareness thing. A lot of people do not realize how much manipulation is happening. They don't see it, even when it comes to on a micro level, the foods that you eat, how much is in those products to lower your testosterone and your ability to think clearly. There's a level of, you got to think if you're a ruler, if you're Alexander the Great, basically one of his famous quotes was, give the people circuses and bread and you'll never have to basically use force, keep them entertained. So you got to think if you're the party in power, you'll do everything you can to dumb down, demasculinate your society, because you don't want combative people. You want people that will cooperate, go with the flow, and allow you to push forward whatever agendas that is. So there's a level of manipulation that people aren't aware of. It's with TV, making it okay to be fat, making it okay to not take care of your body, making it okay, making it bad to be a man, to be masculine. That's you're being offensive towards feminine men or feminine women. And gender roles are important. They play a powerful role, and they have for centuries. When it comes down to a fight, when it comes down to a war, and they're doing the draft, they draft the men. They don't draft the women. So there's all of that plays an important role in society to cooperate and work properly. And the lack of just masculine men that are willing to stand up for themselves, to speak out and say that things are wrong or be combative when you should be. It's pretty. There's definitely some pushback. I've noticed it. I'm seeing some rumbling grow. And now I don't know if a lot of it's being tailored to me because of social media and some of the pages I follow. Sure, there's some of that happening, but I do feel like there's some awareness in these other camps that aren't necessarily out of the flock that are starting to see it too. And you can only push so far before it just becomes, lunacy as far as policies and some of the anti-democratic, anti-democracy kind of things they're trying to push into play right now. So I think you can only go so far for people to realize, hey, this isn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. So it's just a matter of time with some of that stuff. I think, especially if, they start coming for your guns and things like that, then you're going to get some real pushback. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but it's not looking great on some of those fronts. It seems like they might try. But there's a larger community of people that are awake to the BS and the corruption than we perceive. I think that the media will play it a different way, that most people are asleep and not aware. I think there are a lot of people that are aware. It's just we've been either silenced, or they're very good at showing us that it's not the norm, So from what we see on TV, if you turn on Hulu, what you see is just nutso half the time. So I'm trying to get better myself at like shutting out some of that noise, because it's not healthy for me. It makes me very angry. And I noticed that's not healthy for me. It affects my business, it affects my work, it affects my relationship with my girlfriend, because she can tell I'm getting riled up and just want to like break some shit in the morning. And it's like, dude, like just have some breakfast and focus on your business. It's like 8 a.m. and I'm ready to like tear some shit apart because I was scrolling social media and seeing just all this crazy woke shit. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time to be alive, but also I think we're still in a great place as far as opportunity. I don't think any of that's changed, no matter what buttons are pushed. I think it's not. I'm not going to let it affect the way I run my business. Still got to keep pushing forward. We got to adapt a little bit to some changes and things. But yeah, I don't know. I try to remain as optimistic as possible, regardless of what's happening, because I just feel like the other side doesn't do me any good. I spent a lot of time last year just being angry about a lot of things, and I post about it, so people who know me know that I was an avid speaker of my opinion. So I've tried to like unpoliticize my pages a little bit, because again, I don't want to push people away or shove anything down, but I do want to be able to speak when I know that something's just absolutely wrong. I don't think we're meant to just be silent on, but I don't think we do it to the point where it is a detriment to our business or our personal relationships.
Correct. Because, and first and foremost, I respect that above all, because it's like, it's one thing to have all the money in the world, to have, the nice car, the nice house, all these different things. It's one thing to have those as a man. It's a totally another thing to still have your honor.
Right.
Like, to me, honor precedes all things. Like I said before, being good at being a man and being a good man are not the same thing.
Right.
Those are not the same thing. And it's a union of both, through both brute force, power, strength, and virtue.
Right.
So, but when it comes to like speaking out on those things, the one proponent of that where I will go off on is, like you mentioned, at certain points, you have to bring it back in a strategic manner for the sake of like the business and things like that. Mm-hmm. That I do have to agree with you on, because at certain times in certain chapters of your life, because if you look at it as, okay, in the short term, if I don't necessarily stop voicing my opinions, it's just I stop voicing it maybe as frequently or in the same ways or the same places where, one, it's probably just falling on deaf ears, and two, whatever, it's like a detriment to my business. So, okay, trim it back so you can make financial gain, because like it or not, like money leads to a certain level of power and status as well. And that can be leveraged for you to have a much stronger voice.
That's it. That's a good point. Yeah.
So like, I think a lot more people will listen to you if you're in good standings. If there's like some homeless guy outside of like a restaurant, and like, as you come out and he's like yelling a bunch of stuff at you, like, he might be completely right about what he's talking about, but I pay it less mind, because I'm just like, there's a lot going on here, buddy. And like, I have a really hard time like sitting here and like listening to what you have to say.
Right.
No offense to him. And like, no one knows like what he's been through to put him in that position. And also like what he could be saying could be completely true. But it's just like that level of perception. You have to keep that in mind when you're looking to speak in the public eye.
Yeah.
When you're looking to talk to other people, and, everybody has their own perspectives. So
yeah, because even you and myself, I think we're both probably careful of where we get advice from, and most of the people I get advice from they have a bit of a platform, and whether that doesn't necessarily mean fame. It can mean they've hit some success markers that I want to level up to. Some close people to me, like Zach Kravitz, and he's a mentor I've had. Doesn't have a huge social following. he's pretty well known in the creative space, but not many people know him. But the people that do know him knows, how he carries himself, how he carries his business. And it's someone I would take advice from any day of the week. Someone with 50,000 followers on Instagram might give terrible advice as far as business. And, and a lot of that's could be fake followers too, but getting off track. But the point being, the status thing and the platform you have, that does take more, has more weight, obviously. If Joe Rogan or what's his face? What's the other guy who talks about having power and also virtue? He has a great quote.
Not talking about Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, I love his quote. Yeah, talking about being a virtuous man. But yeah, guys like that, it's everything he says. I'm just like hanging on to every word because I know it has a lot of weight, and I respect the hell out of people like that. So yeah, you're right. It's balance. I definitely don't. You speak at the right time. I think that's also part of it, is just knowing when to speak and when not to speak. And then also I was just listening to, it was actually a Christian podcast the other day, but it was talking about what are your actual motives when you actually do speak? Are you doing this for yourself because you want clout? You want people to feel like you're a virtuous person, so you're posting and saying things so people think you're virtuous? Or are you doing it because you actually want to make a difference and impact someone? Like, you have to do some self-analysis, because even if you do think you're saying it to help someone, deep inside, you still might be doing it a little bit for yourself. So I've even questioned myself on a lot of those things. So I stopped posting a lot of the stuff on social media that I was, because I wasn't sure if it was just to piss people off sometimes. And probably it was. A lot of times it probably was just to piss some people off and step on some toes. Of course, I do want to bring awareness to some things, but I think that's a big part of it too. If it comes from a place of like honest, I just want to share this, or, I'm not really, it's not about me, it's about the message. And, I think that's a good time to speak. And that's going to come in, like you said, just doing it sparingly and in a conservative way.
I agree. I think one of the biggest shifts for me when it came to like the content creation side of things and like what I've chosen to put out there came with shifting from speaking like at other people or like giving other people advice, and rather just framing it up in like letting other people share their views and their opinions, and then me just simply sharing my experiences.
Yeah, I think that's lost on, and I think it's honestly that one of the same podcasts that I was listening to was talking about that. It was like, we just don't listen anymore. People don't want to listen. As soon as like it's a different opinion, we shut down.
Right.
And it's immediately your brain goes to like, how's everything they're saying wrong, and how can I combat it and prove them, prove my point better.
That's where all conflicting opinions is where all of the opportunity for growth is. Mm-hmm. Because if I have my opinion and you have yours, I can go talk to someone with the same opinion as me day in and day out, and we're going to come to the same conclusion. There's never going to be any new thoughts or ideas.
Right.
Whereas opposed to if we have opposing opinions or even just varying or different opinions, doesn't mean one's right or wrong. We're able to sit in a room and go back and forth, and I might learn something new, or I might make an alteration or a tweak to what I believe to be the truth based upon something that you say, and we both end up walking out of here with a completely different opinion than before that can still be opposing.
Right.
Like, the reality is, no one's willing to have this conversation. It's everybody, you see the videos on like TikTok and stuff of people like screaming in each other's faces, or like, you're a bigot, or like
right.
misogynist, or like you're all like, everybody's screaming and yelling at each other. It's because we're all listening to respond as opposed to listening to understand. Right. It's like, how about their perspective and where they came from? Like, you didn't grow up, how they grew up.
Right.
But I also think, that poses another, difficult topic of debate as well, of like, everybody has their own perspectives, and like, you can have a level of respect for other people and what they've been through. At the same time, it's also, that's something I think men certainly struggle with as well, is like certain things is like, I was always just taught, you just bury certain things. Mm-hmm. Like there's certain things that you'll experience in your life as a man, as a young man, as a man throughout the course of your life, that you simply accept you'll be buried with them.
Right.
Period. That was instilled in me by my father and by like the generations before me.
Yeah.
It was like, what is it? I know Joe Rogan quoted somebody on his podcast at one point. I wish I knew who the original author was, or it might have been a poet. He said, "Men live lives of quiet desperation."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whether that's instilled or not, it's simply, it's a very well-known fact that just more men have that instilled in them from an early age than women do, for sure.
Yep.
I think men are taught to be less emotional, and they need to be more stable, and that's for very good reasons too. If you look back at our history, if you gotta, I don't know, if you gotta like go out on a hunt and like kill an animal 3 times the size of you and bring back food, or else everybody's starving, or your guys aren't going to make it through the winter. Like, you can't really go out there and be all emotional about like, I miss everybody from back home and it's cold and like, boo-hoo.
Right.
Like you go out and you have to kill, or like you're all going to die.
Yep.
What else are you going to do?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, when it comes to being, I know we're kind of on the topic of being a man. Yeah, it's like combining all those qualities, being not only being a dangerous man, as Jordan Peterson would say, or intelligent and virtuous man, but it's also you do want to be in touch with your emotions too, and when it's the right time, and you want to be also dangerous at the right time, but also being a good listener. I think from what you were saying previously, that's super important. And I remember a quote, and it was actually by Abraham Lincoln, and he was getting criticized because all of his his constituents were like, "Why aren't you destroying our enemies? Why are you being kind to these people?" And he responded, "Well, if I make them my friends, they're no longer my enemies." He's like, "Isn't that the same thing as destroying my enemies?" And so, yeah, he took the stance of listening to other people, and that's why Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest leaders of our time. So yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is really cool to talk about, because it's stuff that we have to incorporate in our businesses every day and moving forward too. Like, yeah, if I befriend my enemies, isn't that destroying my enemies?
Right.
Yeah, I love that. It's brilliant.
So basically what you're saying is you should like keep your friends close and like kill all your enemies. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
yeah,
fuck
pretty much.
I absolutely agree with that. So Chris, I know you got some things you got to run to. You got some work to be done.
Unfortunately, business calls, and that's one of the great things about what we do. But it's also, it's good to be busy. It's good to be busy.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I got a stack of work I got to get to anyways as well. We will definitely make this part 1 then, and we're going to come out with another episode. And I'm sure we'll be shooting some other stuff. See if we can get Ethan on at some point, huh?
Yeah. I think he's looking forward to it.
Yeah, he looks excited right about now.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. This is really cool. I love this. This is a great setup, and yeah, I think this is going to be an awesome podcast moving forward, and all your other business ventures. It's going to be huge.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
This is the foundation.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother.
All right, y'all. Tune into the next episode.